Ever since I made a video about the Alta Labs AP6 Pro, you guys have been asking me to do a comparison video with this against TP-Link Omada and Ubiquiti. And so that's what this video is all about. We'll be taking a look at the EAP653 and Ubiquiti's U6-LR. And before we jump right into the bandwidth results, or the chart for that matter, let's take a look at my floor plan. So as you can see here where X marks the spot, I stood in each one of these locations around my house and I did a series of bandwidth tests, 5 in total, and then I took those 5 bandwidth tests and averaged them together to get the results that you will see on this chart. And so if we take a quick look at the chart, you can also see that I have done 4 different tests, one of which was on the 2.4 gigahertz band, and then 3 of which on the 5 gigahertz band, showing you the channels and also their frequencies at which, of course, the different locations: office, kitchen, living room, guest bedroom, 1 or 3 and 2, and of course the principal bedroom or the master bedroom. And so I also went ahead and listed the version numbers of the firmware of each of the access points. So for the EAP653, for instance, we have version 1.0.9, and for the AP6 Pro is 1.1M, and so forth. And you can see the different results for each of these units at these different channels and frequencies. Now you may also be noticing the U6-LR has DNC on there. What does DNC stand for? That stands for did not complete. And the reason why I was unable to complete the test on the 2.4 gigahertz band is because, well, on the Ubiquiti software, you cannot turn off the 2.4 gigahertz band or the 5 gigahertz band. They are permanently enabled. Now, the best you can hope to achieve is customizing the transmission power and turning that power all the way down, which the lowest you can go is 6 decibels. Furthermore, one thing I tried to do with my Wi-Fi 6E enabled laptop was to prefer the 2.4 gigahertz band only, and trying to force it to use that 2.4 gigahertz band instead of the 5 gigahertz band. And while I did have some success, I wasn't able to get through the 5 bandwidth tests consistently because for some reason Windows would decide to just switch over to the 5 gigahertz band even though I had turned the transmission power to 6 decibels, and I couldn't get accurate results because I'd be performing a test and boom, it would be back on 5 gigahertz. So that's the reason why I did not complete. But I think that's okay because I came up with a scoring system to hopefully give us a somewhat reasonable / accurate idea of just how these performed. And so let's go ahead and take a look at my scorecards for each of these. First up, we have the 2 gigahertz scorecard. So the number of points awarded to the EAP653 was 49, with the AP6 Pro trailing just behind by 1 point with 48 total, and the U6-LR with 41. Moving on to the our first 5 gigahertz test, we have the EAP653 scoring 45 points, the AP6 Pro scoring 52, and the U6-LR scoring 40. And this is going to be a trend for the U6-LR moving forward, where it's typically always scoring 40 points, as you can see on our next test, with the EAP653 scoring 51 points, AP6 Pro 47, and again the U6-LR scoring 40. And for our last test on the 5 gigahertz DFS channel, you can see all of the scores there, with EAP653 coming out ahead. And then finally we have the total score, so the total cumulative points that each of these access points earned, with the EAP653 coming out ahead barely by 1 point, beating out the AP6 Pro by 1 point, and the U6-LR trailing behind with a pretty low score of 161 points. So now let's talk about how I came up with the scorecard, or how I calculated the actual points for these access points. So each access point was awarded 1 point for the number of walls it had to penetrate. So if I had 3 walls in between me and the access point, that access point would gain 3 points right there. And then I decided it'd be a good idea to also give points or award points for distance. So I assigned a value of 1 point per 5 feet. So if I was standing 31 feet away and I divide 31 feet by 5, you get how many ever points. And then I also decided it would be a good idea to give points for essentially completing the test, and I ranked these by whoever got the most bandwidth would get 3 points, whoever got the second most total bandwidth would get 2 points, and whoever got the least most bandwidth would get 1 point. Now, there is a problem with this system. So at least for the bandwidth portion, it's not weighted very well. So it's easier for access points that scored better in the bandwidth test to come out way ahead. And so I'm not a mathematician. I don't know the best way to actually come up with a scorecard system like this. So this is what you got. So you have to take these results with a grain of salt. And just because my scorecard shows that the EAP653 was the best doesn't necessarily mean it was. And now let's also talk about why these results may not be 100% trustworthy. And some of the primary reasons are just inconsistency in the testing. Was I standing in the same place? Was I sitting in the same place while performing the test? The time of day plays a factor because some tests were done at night when everyone's asleep, while others were during the day when hopefully everyone was at work. But different things happen during the day, like the DFS channel test, for instance, when there's more likely radar systems going off. I do live near an airport, so that could have affected the test on ubiquiti, and that gave us a lower score. I don't actually know, but there are different factors there that we have to consider. And also, these tests are unoptimized. So I just literally assigned everyone to the same channel, the same frequency, all that stuff, and set the transmission power to high for all of them, but the high power transmission may not be the same between all three brands. Maybe high on ubiquiti is 26 decibels, while high on Alta Labs is 5 decibels. I don't actually know. There could be differences there. I just used the presets. So these are all unoptimized and may not be giving the best case scenario for each access point. And I think a lot of people are probably just gonna go with the auto function on all of these devices anyway, and they're probably gonna use the auto function on transmission power. And so that is why I chose to just set the transmission power to high. Now in real life, on my ubiquiti U6-LR that I use every day, I have the transmission power set to medium, and I have optimized my network for the way I like it. I don't use 160 megahertz, I just use 80 megahertz, for instance, on the 5 gigahertz band. And I only use, or I think I have auto set on the 2.4 gigahertz band for, you know, whether it should use 20 megahertz or 40 megahertz. So something like that. I think the transmission power to that is also set to medium because I'm trying to keep it localized to my house and not outside of the house itself. So it seems like that I want you to like keep in mind as you're looking at all these results and why the scorecard system that I came up with may not give you an accurate portrayal. Now, I think we can trust the results of the actual bandwidth tests themselves because, again, I just went over there, I sat down, I ran my total of 5 tests on each spot for every single access point, and you know, I think that's pretty accurate for what you're gonna get. Now, you know, you could argue that 5 tests in each spot doesn't give you enough data points, which I would agree with. But honestly, I mean, it would take me ages to go through this. So that's part of laziness on my part, but I still think they're accurate enough. The numbers were pretty consistent. So anyway, again, take all this with a grain of salt. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who pushed me to make this video. It was actually kind of fun trying to come up with a score system. And if you guys have any suggestions for how to better improve my scorecard, let me know. I'd be very interested in how to do that because I have a feeling we're going to probably do this video again in the future with additional devices added to the list. And I would be very curious to know if we can improve the weighting system or the weight to my scorecard so we can get, I guess, a more fair result for everyone. And so anyway, with all that being said, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching, and I will see you all next time. Peace.